Welcome back, everyone, to Spartan Nation. It's now time for the State of Michigan State Athletics with Spartan Nation senior writer Johnny Shop. And quite frankly, what we already know is it's been completely shut down, just like all of the world of sports. And when we say that, I've had some people say, well, you guys are acting like they're doing the wrong things. This isn't a comment about sports shutting down. It's just the reality is it is shut down. It's unprecedented. I'm told that it was similar to this during World War II for a time, but there was nowhere near the media coverage that there was then for sports. And I'm not comparing this to World War II. The only equivalency I have in my lifetime was 9/11, but that was only for a week or two that things got shut down. So for some perspective, we bring in Spartan Nation senior writer Johnny Shop. John, on the state of Michigan State athletics, it's shut down. Your thoughts?
It is shut down. My thoughts are initially relative to Michigan State athletics, it gets down really individual at this point. So when you look at the athletes in all sports, but especially the most significant sports, basketball, football, hockey at Michigan State, what are they going to do with this time? Well, hopefully they get some good advice and they do smart things and they don't put other people in any more danger, which is kind of maybe a key point for young folks that are extremely unlikely to have any trouble based on what we know so far. So what are they going to do with this extra time? Some guys, I would argue, are going to improve themselves bit by bit during this period of pretty extensive break. A lot of guys probably have never had a break this long. Other guys may find themselves finally with an opportunity to heal an injury or two. So this is unprecedented. I think we're going to see some guys get lost. I think we're going to see some guys sharpen the sword, and they're basically living through a lesson, a life lesson they didn't ask for, but they don't have any choice but to live through. So they're going to come out of this changed as far as priorities, discipline, those type of things. We don't know yet if it's going to have any effect on the opening kick September 5th or 4th, depending what day that game ends up being. But as we sit here in March, it looks 50-50 at least that there could be an effect on the start of the college football season. That would be pretty unprecedented as well. So this is a different week that we are in all over the place, and especially the state of Michigan State sports. This is different, and I hope the leadership is solid. I expect it will be. Michigan State University is a institution of higher learning based on science and scientific principles. Those are going to be tested right now, even in the athletic programs.
John, I want to go in a little bit of a different direction with you, but staying in the same water, just fishing maybe in a different part of the pond. I wrote over the weekend that Michigan State, because they're rebuilding and brought in all new staff and everything else under Tucker, these COVID-19 restrictions hurt them the most. I wasn't saying anyone was picking on Michigan State or whatever, but the reality is it does hurt a Michigan State compared to a James Franklin at Penn State, a Jim Harbaugh, Paul Chryst, because these guys are already established. True or false?
It's absolutely true. And for sure you would expect it's going to hurt the offensive side of the ball more than defense because there's going to be some common coaches, common terms, common schemes, given the coaching tree that Coach Tucker falls from. It absolutely hurts Michigan State more than anybody else. And you would argue pretty much the same if there were any other Big Ten program with a new head coach and with a completely new offense. I mean, offensive staff from A to Z that has been there many times for very, very many years. So it does hurt. I imagine that the resources are going to be tested at Michigan State, and whatever makeup time or however this works with spring practice, no spring practice, Coach Tucker and his team all of a sudden find themselves facing a new challenge. But this is where I go back to the value of the experience that Mel Tucker has, especially at the NFL level. He's working as the interim head coach there for a handful of weeks in Jacksonville. All that stuff, all that experience, this is part of what you're paying big dollars for. So let's see what he ends up doing with it. But I would argue that this is when you need somebody as experienced and savvy as Mel Tucker versus maybe some of the other insane and crazy names that were thrown out late in the coaching search that were kind of like a 5-yard Hail Mary, if you can follow that analogy.
So, John, with MSU Athletics shut down, there's a lot of things I want to talk to you about from the NCAA. There's discussion about giving just last year's seniors another year of eligibility and waiving just for the players who were on the squad last year their scholarships to let you go over limits. There's so many different things here. I'd like your thoughts.
Well, you are talking about a haymaker of a decision if you let basketball players who played a complete regular season get a continuous year of eligibility because of this. I think we have an opportunity to finally fix a number of things that are wrong with college basketball. A number of things. This is the time to fix them. And some of them are going to sound familiar to people that remember Mark Hollis, and some of them seem common sense as could be. I'm not as concerned about that issue, meaning I'm okay with whatever they do, but here's what we need to consider now with college basketball, and this is the time to do it. Are we going to make this a one-semester sport? If that's the case, that whole schedule moves quite a bit more into the winter. The Final Four would be, for the March Madness would not begin until after the Masters, so you're talking about sometime in April, and it wraps up later. Are we going to revise the schedule? This is something that's been on the mind for a long time. I know how big the Big Ten is. I know how valuable Big Ten games are. I still think you ought to play a true round-robin schedule. And this is time to make other common sense changes. Go ahead and move the three-point line the whole way out to the NBA level. For God's sake, bring back the jump ball, at least for conference games and NCAA tournament games. Can you tell me a reason why we don't have a jump ball in 2020? It is beyond insane. Also, this is a really good time for some kind of leadership to emerge from a sport that doesn't have any leadership relative to what are they going to do about the one-and-done rule or one-and-done not. I would argue, Hondo, it's time for college basketball to do what's best for college basketball and its mission. So go ahead and let kids go to school, to the NBA if they want. But if they come to school, get a simple rule like the NFL has, or make your own rule that's even better. Maybe like one that there is in baseball or hockey, where if you come to sign a scholarship, you are not eligible for the NBA draft for 3 years. Those kind of changes for college basketball, having to have to scrap really the entire breadbasket because it's become a sport where the event matters more than anything else, meaning the big dance. Those are the kind of reforms that need to be made. They need to be made right now. Those people need to be talking about that behind the scenes right now. So when the dust clears, they say, hey, we got a new plan and here's what we're going to do. Relative to eligibility, I don't see how you can justify giving everybody another year. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think giving the option would be nice. But I think once you open that door, I'm not sure how you close it again.
I can't argue with anything you said, John. John,
well, I'm curious what you think about the concept of expanding the schedule, shrinking the non-conference schedule, and or moving the sport to be a one-semester sport. So basketball would not begin until January. You're talking about a very major significant change if that were to occur.
Yeah, I would love it. I would love to see Midnight Madness be the Sunday or at midnight. So basically Saturday night after Thanksgiving. Start the season January 2nd, right after all the bowl games, and finish the NCAA tournament the end of April, or maybe even the first Monday in May be the championship game. I want a complete round robin. Nobody likes them playing Central Montcalm Baptist Lutheran School of the Blind. You know, it's just dumb. I totally support it. I love it. I think it's great. John, I want to go to a different angle with you because you are an attorney and a very respected attorney at that. The legal ramifications, the CBS pays $1 billion for the tournament. There's all the Big Ten Network's rights. I mean, there's a lot here. From a legal standpoint, what goes through in your mind with all this?
Well, the first thing that goes through my mind is provisions in the agreements that they have for something basically called act of God, an act of God. What's happened with the virus, not to say that there's a God that made it happen, but it's basically considered an act of God. It's something that was unforeseen, came out of nowhere, wasn't really assignable. There's no fault we can assign to anybody. It's not like CBS said, we're not bringing our cameras to the games, we're not going to broadcast them. Or it's not like the colleges said, hey, we're not going to that site to play the games. So you have an act of God. There's likely provisions deep in those contracts that describe what happens in those cases. As you can imagine, there should be a lot of contract attorneys across the country getting those kind of calls. They will be getting those kind of calls as people show up, don't show up for jobs, etc. This is such a major hit in the city of Atlanta. The city of Atlanta was preparing to host the Final Four, expected to have a better experience than last time around. There were Taylor Swift playing a pre-show on the Sunday, after the Final Four game, before the national title game. So thousands of folks with booked free tickets, all those things down, stopped. So you have an extensive amount of contracts and issues, whether you're talking about vendors for the Final Four experience, or you're talking about the major, humongous CBS TV deal that we understand is the extraordinary primary source of funding all the work and all the sports the NCAA has. So this is unprecedented, and my initial concern is what happens to those TV dollars. I don't know how it works, to be honest with you. I don't know all the advertising time that a major insurance company bought for March Madness, since they're not going to be running any commercials. I don't know if they write the check. So it doesn't go very far in the world of sports to realize there's going to be some financial ramifications of what is going on here relative to no games pretty much anywhere. And I got a wild story about being in Las Vegas when that went down, if you're interested.
Of course I do. Tell me. So you wait. So you were in Vegas recently?
Yes, we went to Las Vegas on Wednesday. So the plan was get out there and start to play with some of these games. And I'm on the plane, and you can watch some live TV, and I see a lot of people at ESPN like, listen, this North Carolina, take North Carolina, bet North Carolina. So the first thing I think is, as soon as I walk in that door, I'm going to put some money on Syracuse. Well, the plane got delayed, and we didn't get into even walking through a casino until halftime. And at halftime, I realized Syracuse is way up. That's on Wednesday evening. Not even an hour or two later, everything starts getting canceled, including the Pac-10 tournament that was there in Las Vegas, including the entire NBA season, practically stopping in mid-stride. And then I see the unbelievable story of the Nebraska head coach getting sick during the game. So it all went wild. Fast forward the next day, you've got hockey and other sports getting canceled, and I look up at those sports as we're walking by, and they still got lines up, for games that didn't play. The next day, there are no lines on anything. Zero. You've got the category still up there. You've got nobody there. Nothing. No betting Super Bowl line, nothing anywhere. Day after that, you start hearing about sports books closing, and then, of course, on Sunday night, the expected happens. Starting with the Wynn casinos, they talk about closing on Monday and shutting doors on Tuesday. MGM goes along with it. How big a hit is this? They were expecting 250,000 people on Las Vegas Boulevard during the NFL draft in April. So I happened to just be there as this entire sports gambling and NFL draft scene, as it all came kind of crashing to an extraordinary halt. And it was a wild scene. I'm not a big gambler at all, obviously, but to walk through a sports book, you see all those lines, they're all gone. Nothing.
Interesting. We're talking to Spartan Nation senior writer Johnny Shop. So, John, let's look at this from a practical standpoint, and then before we let you go, we're going to come back from a legal standpoint.
Sure.
But purely from a practical standpoint, I'm hearing an expectation that people are going to expect Major League Baseball and other sports to get going probably in May, but June 1st at the latest. That's the expectation of what I'm hearing. I'm just curious from you, where are the practical ramifications from here? I mean, imagine sports fans going that long without sports.
Yeah, the practical ramifications, I think, to me, begin with business. This is a huge business. The NFL, for example, is the most popular entertainment product in the country. Not the most popular sport, it's the most popular entertainment product. So are we going to live in a world without NFL being broadcast on TV? No way. I don't think so. I think by then they will figure out a way or have done what they need to do, even if you're playing games with no crowd, to get rolling. So you would expect something like the Major League Baseball outdoor. Maybe that makes a slight difference, makes it easier for them. I don't know. But I think we're going to see games on TV as soon as they possibly can be paid, because the most profitable network in the history of cable television, ESPN, needs some of that. The regional sports networks need that, and for sure the people, the sports fans need that. By then they're going to kind of go nuts. So practically speaking, I would expect sports to begin again as soon as it is safe enough to be broadcast. That's my practical thought.
All right, now let's simply go from the legal standpoint, John. Give us your thoughts on the legal standpoints. What are some things people need to be looking for?
Well, it's a complicated time because you've got two sides of the law, criminal law and civil law. Criminal law is really the state's case against somebody that's committed a crime. So I don't know that we're going to see a whole lot there, but you've got to be careful of some criminal negligence. And I would think that depending on how stretched resources are and depending on how stir crazy people get, if somebody wants to, make a splash or try to make a noise by doing something crazy, you could see a potential criminally negligent event occur. I don't think that's too much the concern. The other one is the civil law, and that's going to be a larger concern because everybody walking around in the short and near term, if you will, they're going to be concerned about what's all around them. So that does put a position like the Rose Bowl. Obviously these things had to be canceled. It seemed premature. It may not seem so premature in a couple of weeks, but one of the reasons is that they've got to protect themselves from knowingly and willingly being in danger of putting people in physical danger. If the building's on fire, you can't invite people in, to have a party. So we're also in a little bit of a new era. Nothing really like this has happened on this kind of a scale. And the law is always kind of following behind a little bit. So whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and then we'll see how the law reacts, how it evaluates, how it judges, how juries make decisions on things. So it's hard to predict exactly how the law is going to go, but it is a good time for people to be reminded that the standard of being reasonably prudent is going to apply across the board. If you see people stepping out of bounds from that, you're going to see the law react. If not, you're going to see things kind of move forward and progress on their own, if that makes any sense at all.
John, we have 1 minute left, and it's a hard break, so we got to stay up against it. Your thoughts now. I've asked you as an attorney and a journalist, but now I'm asking you as just my friend who's a sports fan.
Current state of sports is it's a reset. It may be a really hard reset or a reboot. It's a reset. Just like the priorities and everything got reset lastly, probably after September 11th, as the country's been in war for a very long time. The priorities are going to be reset after this, and we're not going to know really the impact of it probably for a year or so, but I do think the world of sports has been and will be changed from this point.
He is the great Spartan Nation senior writer, John Shop. John, 20 seconds. I'm just curious. I don't expect courts to shut down at all. I mean, people are allowed a quick case. Is that not true? 15 seconds.
No. A lot of states have closed down already. Georgia is one of them. There are changes to the court system, at least for the next 60 days.
Interesting. He is the one and only, the great Spartan Nation senior writer Johnny Shop. Follow him at Spartan Nation. I think you'll probably be hearing more of him as this COVID-19 crisis continues. 19 crisis continues. 19 crisis continues.